It's the morning after, and now we gotta button up a few things. Alright, so yesterday was pretty crazy, pretty surreal for me. But I wanted to thank everybody for helping me out. That was really awesome. Come out here and spend their time and kind of coach me through some of this stuff. And, this is my first engine build. And, there was a few nuances that we needed to tighten up and things like that. When it came to the air intake, we found an air leak. And I don't know if it's, I don't think I could see in here, but there's a bunch of different ports on the back of this. In fact, you could see one of them right there. See that little circle underneath the red wire? That was no Teflon tape on it. And so once we put Teflon tape on there, boom, took care of my idling issues. Another part of that idling issue is actually getting the computer to learn the system. And so one of the problems is if you have an air leak, it's throwing random chaos, if you will, into the computer learning. And so the computer's trying to learn chaos, which it can't do. And so that was adding to it. It was like a push and pull thing. So once we got that locked in, within a minute or two, we started doing the learning procedure, which you saw in the last video, where you're trying different RPMs, different things up to about 2,500 RPMs. And then after, and you can actually see on the computer screen itself, it will say something like no learning and then learning. So it will tell you what area it's actually learning. And so I did that for about 3-4 minutes. And then all of a sudden you let your foot off the pedal and it's idling perfect. And so it was really cool. So some of the things that we kind of ran into was, not only that was kind of the biggest one, but this side is totally fine. Over here, we're having a small little oil leak coming out right here. And during the video, you could see like there was smoke kind of coming up from here. So there was some oil coming from here. And the other thing was this sensor that in 2 videos ago, I was saying, yeah, I don't have a special socket to get in there and do what I need to do to, like I'm not taking that apart to put the oil in because that was a pain in the ass to put in to begin with. Well, that was somewhere around 3 years ago when I did that. And I guess I didn't have the right socket then to do it. So it wasn't tight. And you can see we have a rag back in there. Oil was dripping down there and then it was coming out down over here. So when you're looking back at the other videos, you could see this like pool of oil down there. And it was from the oil coming out of the top of the oil sensor. And it was tight, but it wasn't tight. And I think the actual, I think what really the problem was is there's a double washer that's on it. And the washers looked like they were kind of stuck on the threads at a certain area. So I think it was only like half in. And the washers were kind of stuck in an area thinking that it was fully tight, but it wasn't because you only put like 15 pounds of torque on it. It's really small, which is nothing. And so once we pulled that out and I did some filing to make it a little bit easier and I bought a new thin wall socket that I could get on there, when we were messing around with it and okay, let's put some Teflon on this, stuff like that, then I kind of noticed that, man, these, is this supposed to go all the way up against the wall of this thing, or is it supposed to be right on the edge of the threads? And by the time I got done with the Teflon tape, those washers were all the way up on the top. And so now I know it's fully in. And so there's another thing going on with that too. So I had that connected directly to my auto meter gauge and I was getting no pressure reading. And we ended up switching it back over to the Holley ECU harness, which I was able to get a readout on my screen so I could see that I had oil pressure, and that was great. And so a long time ago, I bought this like LS adapter kit, but the instructions suck. I mean, like they're really horrible. You have no idea where you're coming from, where you're going on it. and it just doesn't make any sense. And it's like water temperature or oil pressure. It's like, well, I don't think temperature and pressure are the same type of gauge. I could be totally wrong, but seems like it'd be different technologies. So I have no idea what they're talking about. I got to call them. But if I could, what I'd rather do is find out what the meter needs and actually run this through the CPU or the ECU and then run an output out the ECU to fire up the gauge on the wall. I'd rather do that. That way I have it in both places. So that'd be great. So that's something I need to work on. Greg pointed out we were getting a little bit of leaking from here and my lower radiator hose, so I'm going to switch around with some of that stuff today. I'm really not sure why it's leaking because I got it cranked down pretty well, but I'll move the clamps a little bit and see what's happening. And then, of course, I'm going to clean the top of the engine where the oil's running down and just kind of do a few nuances and make sure everything's buttoned up. And then some point, maybe today, maybe later this week, I'm going to take this apart and see what's going on because there's no reason that this should be leaking at all. So maybe something happened to the gasket when it was being put on or something. And that's about it. And so it was really nice to hear from Greg, which I put at the end of the video, that he's like, man, you did a great job. For someone who does this all the time, this is the type of minimal stuff that you'll find, because you're always going to find something when you're starting something up. It's never going to be flawless. He goes, but for a guy that's never done this before, he's like, man, I'm really proud of you. So that was really awesome to hear. And, I try my best with this stuff. I don't claim to be an expert at any of this because, it's paint by numbers for me at this point. But now that I've gone through this car once, I'd love to do a second car and see how much faster it would go. I would have a clue about stuff, the second time around. And I know what I could get away with in what order and things like that. So the other big thing that happened, which is the reason that we didn't take the car out, is I've been having an issue bleeding the brakes in this car. Now, we bled them once, me and Bob bled them once, sprung a leak, which was right at the master cylinder area. So got the tools, I fixed that. We bled the brakes again, got pressure, everything was great. That was, I don't know, a week or two ago, I don't remember. Then, as soon as I hop in the car for the first time and we're starting to, start the engine and, get the things going, I noticed that the brake's not holding pressure anymore. And so there's no leaks. Like, there's zero leaks on the ground. There's nothing coming out anywhere. And so we're thinking that we maybe have some air gaps inside the master cylinders or somewhere in this area and not necessarily in the main lines. Or the air that's in there is just in an area that regular bleeding's not going to work. Bob has one of those, pump type vacuum bleeders. Maybe his isn't working that great. I'm not really sure. So I ordered a pneumatic brake bleeder. Hopefully it's the right thing that we could do. I'm trying to make it as automated as possible and as forceful as possible to get rid of this problem. So we're going to try to do that this week sometime, and then hopefully have this car on the ground and going around the block next week to just test it, see if everything's working. But right now, it just sounds great. I mean, the engine sounds amazing. No weird rattles or anything, no nuances. Everything's just solid, perfect. And once that CPU learned everything and we got it to idle, we turned it off. We worked on the brakes for, whatever it was, an hour. And then right before Greg had to leave, he's like, do me a favor, start the engine and see if it goes straight to idle. And I started up and it automatically revved it 2-3 times by itself, the computer did. And then all of a sudden, boom, stayed at idle. And so we were real happy with that. So I'm going to go today and kind of just try to go through some of these nuances and clean some stuff up and, get this thing ready for its next launch trial. So here we go. Alright, so we found our oil leak right there. Need to get that seated in better. I don't know what happened. But I also wanted to show you this vent and the kind of filter, if you will, that's there from splashing oil. So hopefully oil doesn't come flying out that vent. So I was talking about it earlier and wanted to show it to you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this up, get it bone dry, and get it back on there. Alright, so we've been having issues bleeding the brakes, and I have bled these brakes 5 different times, and we have no pressure in the pedals. So we've tried all sorts of different ways. We've tried pneumatic, we've tried all those different things, and then finally I was talking to them on tech support, and they gave us one way of doing it, which we did, which was the front and back at the same time, since I have split reservoirs. That still didn't work. So then I called back, and then they said, you need to take the master cylinders out and bleed them on the bench. And I'm assuming what that means is the air's not going back and forth right here when you're trying to bleed brakes, that you got 5 inches of tube and 5 inches of tube while you're on the bench, and then you could see the air come out, and then it's officially out and never comes back. That's the only difference I could see while having these in the car and not in the car, that you don't have to run that air through 20 foot of line, but it still kind of doesn't make sense to me, but okay, fine, I get it. That's what I have to do. So what I'm going to try to do is actually extract one of these, test that theory, and just kind of see where we get. And I'm not thrilled about it because the body's on the car. This would be a lot easier process if the body wasn't on the car, but I do want to try to get this thing through the inspection and VIN number and all that stuff, and get this car road ready so I could actually do something with it. Otherwise I have to really change my whole philosophy of what I'm going to do. And you know, wait until the car's getting painted before I get a VIN number, which I didn't really want to do it that way. So we're going to see what happens and kind of go from there. We're doing it on the bench.
Oh. How does that work?
Same principle, but you only got 10-inch lines. And let me tell you, it sucks. So it's actually like 9 days later from when we started the car, and I have just been having a bear with these brakes, and 6 times the charm. Turns out that 6 is the magic number. So we went through all different kind of bleeding. I think I already talked about this before. We tried the traditional way. Someone's just pushing it. You open it up, you close it, you push, open it up, close it, you know, that kind of stuff. Then, you know, I talked to them. We did the dual bleed. So we had one person in the car, and then we did the front and back at the same time since I have the dual reservoir. Then I did the pneumatic. Then we did some traditional stuff again. And, you know, finally they said you got to take the master cylinders out, which I'll try to show you here. is a little bit difficult to get to because you can't get a wrench into anything down here because all this stuff is in the way. So it took me probably 10 minutes just to get one of those nuts off because I could go quarter inch, not even like an eighth of a turn, flip the wrench over, eighth of a turn, flip the wrench over, eighth of a turn. And I sat there and did that for, 20 minutes to get just the one bolt out or one nut off. So in any case, took that out, put it on the bench. Now you can see how much I can't really switch to anything else going on because it's just pure brake fluid craziness. It's there. It's there. We got the chair for bleeding. It's down there. I mean, it's literally like it's taken over the garage. And like it's just been this way for 7 days of just like beating my head against the wall. We had to take the dash out too because we needed to get in there. So, everything's apart to like fix this little issue. So it's been kind of nuts, but I am here to say that we officially did it. And so as you were watching the video, it says indeterminate. And when I was bleeding over here, it was bubble city, bubble city, bubble city, then almost no bubbles, and then bubble city, bubble city. And it was like, I sat there for 15 minutes. They're like, oh, 5 minutes each, you'll be fine. I sat there for 15 minutes and it was no different than when I started. And it was just like, I don't, so I just waited to a point where it looked like there was no bubbles. And I'm like, I'll just stop here because, I don't know what else to do. None of this really makes sense to me, honestly. And so, in other words, I don't see, besides having shorter tubes and an easier way for bubbles to go out, besides that one point, which I know is a big point, but besides that, I don't see any different than what I was doing in the car. So we did that. We sealed it off the best we could. We brought it into the car, had to thread it back onto the balance bar, which was a bitch. And the first one was easy. The second one was really difficult because the way it threads in, you can't, I don't know if I can show it to you, but the way those threads in back there, you can't actually install this with the two bolts. It has to be out. Well, once it's out, you can't turn it over or else the liquid will go out and you'll put air in the system. So one hand ain't going to do it. Two hands ain't going to do it. Needed 3 to 4. You can't see anything in there, and you can't see anything once your hand's in there. So it was kind of a big pain in the ass, honestly. But we did it. So what I decided to do, this is kind of interesting, is there's a tube going from here kind of up and into the reservoir. So once we got it onto the balance bar, and I got at least one bolt on, then I'll show it to you. We have a special little cone hose on a vacuum pump. And so I shoved that actually into the hose of the reservoir and pulled suction so there was no air in that line, pinched it, and then shoved it on the side. So we were trying to eliminate as much air because that was the point. Like I'm bleeding this thing, but then I'm going to pop it on lines that have 5 inches of air on each side. What's the point? Doesn't matter. You're going to blow the air right into it anyways. So I tried to do the best I can to eliminate all that. So then after that's done, of course, you're going to have air in this tube right here. And so what I decided to do is I sucked this out. I attached everything. I attached these. Then I went back to the pneumatic without never ever touching the pedal. And I took that and I sucked all that air out as possible. Now, normally you would do that from the furthest area, but I decided I wasn't going to do it from the furthest area. I was going to do it from the shortest area because I just want to take the air and take it right out. So I took that air and I took it right out on the shortest side. So I did this side first. Then after that was all said and done, we put that away. And then we decided to do what Willwood wanted us to do, which was a 3-man bleed. And so then we went to manual bleeding on each side with a bucket of juice on each corner, valves open, and the foot pedal just going in and out, no closing in between or anything, just in and out. And you just saw it suck that level out of those reservoirs. Took only about 20 pumps to suck the level, suck the juice right out. And so we had to keep filling that. And then the front seemed to be good, but that back took a while to get that one to clean out. And so we finally did get that one cleaned out. So it sounds like total chaos when I'm explaining all this. And you're like, man, that's way, like, you didn't have to do that. Believe me, this was my 6th time. I did the best I could to scientifically do it the best I could. And, I don't know. It's working. That's all I got to say. Now, when I come back to this 5 days later, is it going to be working? I hope so. And so that's kind of the big test. If I sit back down in the car a few days later and we're still feeling some pressure, then it's kind of a go for me to, possibly bring this thing, put it on the ground, and take it for a little spin. So updates, since it's been a few days, is right now I decided to remove my oil pressure sensor that's down there that I said I couldn't get to, which you can see right there. And I'm putting in this one, which I just painted, which is going to directly work with my gauge. Now to do that, I have to get an adapter to go from there to the, I believe it's M16 hole that's in there. So I got that on the way. And that's the thing that sucks. There's no stores locally you could get any of this stuff anymore. And so I have to frickin' order everything from online. I have to go to the hardware store, figure out what size it is, see if the hardware has it. No, of course they don't. See if my specialty auto shops have it. No, they don't. And then I have to order online and wait a week. And so little things like this, like I can't start the engine until I fill that hole. Otherwise it'd be oil all over the place. So that's been really frustrating in this process. So I got that coming. Now, someone suggested, and even Greg suggested while we were starting the engine, that you could have a steam port vent put into this coupler. And I was like, well, yeah, that's probably true if this was the same, but since this is 1.25, this is 1.5, maybe it's going to be harder to find. Sure enough, someone left me on my YouTube channel a link to a part, which is kind of what I have now, except 1.25 and 1.5, that had the steam port in it. And I was like, okay, that's cool. Let me see if I can get one with the 2 different sizes in the steam port. And I was able to. So I grabbed one of those, and then I grabbed a hose, 2 clamps. So that's all being ordered in. I'm ordering a smaller clamp for this because this is maxed out. This might work right now, but I don't really like that it's maxed out. So we're going to pull this, pop a new one in, and I'll do this all at the same time. I bought new clamps for this so I can switch them over to these nice T-clamps. So we're going to get a whole bunch of stuff all at once. So yeah, so hopefully we get that last gauge to work because we're changing the sensor, get all this to work. And once I get this on the ground, then I could actually do some testing for whether my reverse light trigger is working, stuff like that, which I don't even have the reverse lights even connected, but we could test some of that stuff. So we'll see how it goes. But in any case, brakes, good. Safety, good. We'll see how it goes. Till next time, have a great day.